Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Many devotees ask why should we read other scriptures? Should we read commentaries of previous acharyas? We have Srila Prabhupada books, and of course Prabhupada books are the basis. Srila Prabhupada books are our inspiration and the foundation of Krishna consciousness. But the question is, what about the books of previous acharyas? Narottam Das Thakur, Vishnu Chakra Thakur, Jiva Goswami. What about reading their commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam besides Srila Prabhupada? Should we do that or not? And if we go a little more wider, should we read books of other religions, Islam, Christianity, or perhaps even Mayavad books? Should we do that or not? Well, some guidelines is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but that has to be understood in proper context. This is a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, 22nd chapter, 118th verse. It's said, Srila Prabhupada writes in the commentary, Bahu Granth Kala Abhyas Vyakhya Varjiva. Now Srila Prabhupada writes there that we should not read so many books here and there. Srila Prabhupada comments, if we are reading one book, we should read completely and then go to another book. But what about reading those books? I mean to say, you can read those books, but Prabhupada is saying you should read it completely. You should not like make a library and read here and there and then understand nothing and jack of all trade, master of none. That's not the advice. But then there's another verse, Chaitanya Charitamrita, 16th chapter, 11th verse, Adi Leela. And there the verse goes, Bahu Shastre Bahu Vakke Chitte Bhram Hoye Sadhe Sadhan Shresht Na Hoye Nishchay. Srila Prabhupada writes there that Chitte Bhram Hoye, so I'm not giving the exact translation, but the verse means Chitte Bhram Hoye. Your heart will get bewildered if you read many books and many commentaries. Now this is a direct verse which people quote that, besides Prabhupada books, you should not read any book, otherwise you will get confused. And there's a truth in that. It's not wrong, there's a truth. If we read so many books in an immature stage, that's conditions apply, then we may get completely confused. And that's the second line, by the way. We should not read the half verse. The half knowledge is dangerous. What's the second line? Bahu Shastre Bahu Vakke Chitte Bhram Hoye Sadhe Sadhan Shresht Na Hoye Nishchay. What happens when we read so many books and so many commentaries? Krishna Consciousness Swami writes, Sadhe Sadhan Shresht Na Hoye Nishchay. You will not be able to fix your goal of Krishna consciousness, and neither you will be able to decide the way to that goal. In other words, it will be very difficult to establish sadhe, which is goal, prayojan, and that is love of God. The aim of life is love of God. It's not liberation, it's nothing, it's not siddhis. And neither you'll be able to conclusively establish in your mind that the only way to achieve love of God is devotion. It's not jnana, yoga or karma. So in that context, this verse is spoken. The advice is, yes, we should not read many books and many commentaries because you will get confused about the goal and the process. And that will happen when we are a very immature or new devotee, Kanishtha. But when we advance in devotion, then what happens? Then what's the advice? Well, when we advance in devotion, the advice is that time we have to read books because of various reasons. First is, when we advance and when we grow in Krishna consciousness, we will have to preach. That's the order of Mahaprabhu. Chare dekho, chare kaho, Krishna udesh amar aage, guru hai charo edesh. That's our duty, to preach, to expand this mission. And to expand this mission, we will encounter many people. If you are in the West, you will encounter Christians. If you're in the Middle East, you'll encounter Muslims. If you're in India, you might encounter Mayavadis and so many other sects. So you should have the knowledge of those books so that you can defeat them, or you can correct them of the misunderstandings of their own book. So that's why we require knowledge. I mean, say Baldev Vidyabhushan, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta, they were highly knowledgeable about so many things. Bhaktisiddhanta himself was called as an encyclopedia, people used to call him. That's why Srila Prabhupada also said in this regard. Prabhupada said you should know something of everything and everything of something. And that's a beautiful saying. It summarizes everything. Something of everything. That means you should know all the knowledge, I mean to say whatever you can, whatever is required for preaching. If you are in scientific preaching, you have to read many science books. If you're in Middle East, you have to understand Islam and read those books. And if you're in India, if you're preaching to Vaishnavas, if you're in Gaudiya Vaishnav community, you have to read commentaries of previous acharyas to show how Srila Prabhupada is a summation of all those commentaries of previous acharyas and actually glorify Srila Prabhupada books. So reading previous acharyas commentaries, it will help you to glorify Srila Prabhupada and not to demean him. That's not the idea, and if that's the idea, devotion is lost. So that's the point there. In advanced stages, we should read, we allowed to read. If you're convinced of a goal and the process and you're not confused, then you can expand your knowledge, read books, read commentaries. I mean, you can also read Mayavad, because although Mahaprabhu said, Mayavad bhashe sun lo hoye sarvanash, if you read Mayavad, you'll get destroyed. But the point is, if you have to defeat Mayavad, you have to know what's Mayavad. In fact, if you read Prabhupada books and Prabhupada in commentaries is defeating Mayavad, you have to understand a little bit of Mayavad to understand what Prabhupada is defeating. Otherwise, you'll not even understand the anti-arguments. So, in that context, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he became scholar in Mayavad. At one time, he was in Mayavad Mutt in Jagannath Puri. And people were saying he has become a Mayavadi. That was the point. Baldev Vidyabhushan, all these people who were fighting Mayavad, they knew Mayavad. So, you might have to read Mayavad also, but maybe not in so much detail. So that's the point. That's how we harmonize things. The conclusion is, in immature stage, read Prabhupada books. When you are new, read only Prabhupada books. Be convinced of the goal and the process. Be absolutely clear. But when you advance, when you start preaching, when you meet more people, then you can read other books of other religion also, and commentaries of previous acharyas. But remember, always come back to Srila Prabhupada books. Srila Prabhupada books are the basis and the foundation. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.